And welcome back to Game Escape, here today to discuss video game box design. Now, I'm not talking about box art, but the actual physical and graphical designs of video game boxes and how they've evolved from generation to generation. And I actually think this is pretty fascinating because box design is one of the key ways that companies have differentiated their products from generation to generation, and it's particularly important for those times where they have two competing generations on the shelf, say from Nintendo to Super Nintendo, Genesis to Saturn, things like that. And it's very important for companies to create a box design that's going to draw you in, and that's essentially going to advertise the system. So if you see a whole bunch of media on a shelf, you can say, hey, that's a Super Nintendo game, or, that's an N64 game. It's a very, very fine line that these companies walk, because on the one hand, you want the packaging to be cost-effective and perhaps nowadays environmentally friendly. On the other hand, you really have to make the box stand out so that in a split second, the consumer can identify the console and identify, the product being offered, and be able to say, oh, well, yeah, they've got some Gameboy games, or they have some DS games. So I've always thought this was a just fascinating aspect to collecting, and I just love how these designs have evolved. And of course, we're standing at a time right now where in a couple months we're going to see the PS4 and Xbox One designs, and I've always had a certain nostalgia for just the way the game boxes looked and the different variations between them, again, from generation to generation, but also as they evolve within a generation. So we're going to take a look at some of my favorite box designs here. I don't have every game system around, but we'll just look at the games and the systems that I have, and just kind of look back on this really, really cool aspect of gaming and collecting. Alright, so first up we have the Sega Master System, and these boxes were competing against the NES boxes for shelf space. Obviously the NES had a lot more shelf space and a lot more games. Now unfortunately I do not have any complete in-box NES games, and actually I don't have any NES games at all because I was forced to sell them as a kid. So we'll just have to take a look at the Master System here. Of course you have the iconic, it's almost like a graph paper background, and then almost like a little bit of clip art representing the game. Sometimes if it was a bigger game, they would put the number of megs on there, and maybe a little advertisement up here, or they would, they'd give you the genre, like action, role-playing, which you saw, you saw a lot of, at least from what I can remember, in the 16-bit era. You look at the sides here, you've got Sega logo, just the typed-out list of what the game is, and you typically get 2 or 3 screenshots, and then actually a little paragraph kind of both describing the game and actually setting up the storyline. And of course you had the little tag up here. A lot of Master System games, if you get them complete in box, sometimes the tag will be removed. So I don't know, do you guys consider that to be, a complete box if it's missing the little hanging tag? Let me know. So that was the Sega Master System. Then of course the Genesis came out, and kind of the earlier Genesis games went with the black checkered box look. You have the Sega Genesis seal, usually somewhere on the front, and the Genesis logo indicating that it is indeed a 16-bit cartridge. So you can see actually how these would stand out on the shelf. Obviously the black was the differentiating factor here. When you saw the black, you knew it was this new Sega Genesis game in the late 80s, early 90s. And again, 2 to 3 screenshots and kind of an overview of the game, indication that it is one player, the Master System boxes. Didn't always do that. Sometimes they wouldn't include it in the paragraph. Now, as far as the inside of these boxes go, things hadn't really changed much from the Master System to the Genesis era. Again, you had like a nice little holder for the cartridge and a little space for your instruction manual. And that was really the same with the Genesis cartridge slot, but this doesn't particularly have a manual, but it would go here. So, you know, it's a solid design, and I think it's, you know, makes it very, very collectible. You know, you have this slightly ribbed plastic protect the box art, and, you know, as a result, I mean, Genesis games are, you know, they stand the test of time. It's a very, very good box. So that was one of the early Sega Genesis boxes. As time went on, you can see here there was some variation. You have games that sort of lose the checkered border and that are all box art. And so companies like Electronic Arts, you know, most of their games, earlier games, would have this look. Some of the EA Sports titles then would be all white. In this case, you got some more screenshots. Tengen games, they would have that little stripe, and get a lot more screenshots. What you see here, actually, if we zoom in, they actually gave you bullet points describing what you can do in the game and the various features, and we saw a good bit of that in the 16-bit era. Then later on, actually, we had another box variation. This was towards the end of the life of the Genesis, and they went with, let me get this out of the glare here, they went with this red color stripe. All of the Sega systems had a different color on the left-hand side of the cartridge, and it was red for the Genesis. Of course, we have the rating here, and again, at least 3 screenshots, and some more box art here on the back. You've got the sort of brick wall for Street Fighter. And again, we see those, it's hard to see here, but you do see those bullet points describing the game, 1 or 2 players, Sega seal of quality. And here on the side, you actually got the developer logo and the game logo. So that was the Genesis. At the same time, Sega released their peripheral, the Sega CD. And that had the blue stripe. This was one of the long boxes, and this was kind of the standard casing for early CD games. We'll see it with the Saturn, I believe the 3DO had this, and even the early Sony PlayStation games had this. So you can see a little bit more room for bigger screenshots. Don't have the bullet points here, but you can actually look inside. These games were kind of interesting because they would give you the little bit of foam that you could put in there and protect the disc, which of course was the new medium. And they really had some more space for some nice box art. Back, again, developer logo, game logo, and then the big Sega CD. So you can see that, you know, on the shelf, it was very, very clear, you know, which game was a Genesis game, which one was a Sega CD game. You know, just as you were passing by, you know, from the color alone, you can make that determination. That's important, and that's the distinction that developers have to make. I mean, it's kind of a, you know, fairly obvious point. Well, that says Genesis, that says Sega CD, but in that split second that you're walking by a display case, the color and the size is going to say to you right away, within, you know, 10 seconds, oh, this, you know, they've got the Sega CD stuff. So then the Sega Saturn was released, and they again maintain that long box structure. This time we have the white border, and inside I don't have it's the same inside. I don't actually have the bit of foam for this. And we scan the same. We've got the Saturn logo, game logo, developer logo. And in this case, you know, you got more screenshots. These boxes are not very sturdy. It's very hard to find a long box in good condition. The Japanese Saturn actually went with the standard smaller CD cases. This is the sort of double case that became famous. We've seen that in PlayStation. This is the single case. Here on the right hand side you've got the name of the game, Saturn logo, and also on the left hand side. Look inside here, have space for the manual, and then sometimes they would give you more stuff. In this case we've got posters, move lists, and then the second special CD here for Last Bronx. I like the Japanese Saturn look. I mean, I think it just looks so much more sophisticated if you put it one next to the other. I mean, would definitely pick up that game, though the logo's better, I think. So that is the Sega Saturn. And lastly, for Sega, we have the Dreamcast. And finally, they went to the standard CD casing when they released the Dreamcast. There's actually two box colors here. You've got the white Sega Dreamcast, and that was again the differentiating feature. You know, you'd go to a store and see the Saturn, see the Dreamcast on the shelf, and again this looks more modern, more advanced. It's kind of that sort of semicircular look here. The Dreamcast logo sort of set in on kind of the right-hand spine here. Really classy look. I think, and maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, the earlier Saturn games had kind of the white background here, and then the later ones had the black. And on the back, you can see it at this point, developers were kind of putting down, what all the features were that you could get in the game. Getting a little less space for box art and screenshots, but it's a solid, effective kind of case here. And it was understated, but to me it always looked cool to see these Sega Dreamcast boxes on the shelf. Alright, after Sega, what comes next but Nintendo? Now again, sadly, I do not have any NES boxes, but you can Google those or look on eBay. A rectangular box with a lot of box art and Nintendo seal of quality, usually on the front, definitely on the back. Very colorful. So then, after the NES, we have the SNES. And there's two examples. I don't have a lot of complete in-box Super Nintendo games, but these are two that I do have, and this is just such a classic box design. I loved seeing these on the shelf, so different than the NES games. And as you can see, you always had the black sort of L-shaped border, so it's more, you got a little bit of black border up on the top with the red Super Nintendo logo. And then I love the kind of controller emblem here. I don't know if you can see that with the light, but I love, for whatever reason, I just love that logo. Sort of bold game logo here, also on the sides. Just a terrific looking box. Any way you put it on the shelf, any way you want to display it, you've got the game. I would kind of like to display it this way if when I put it on my shelf. Bold box art on the front, actually sort of always moving over from the frame into the border, which I always thought was so cool. And then on the back, you see that here, lots of colorful screenshots. See right there, and again that bullet point structure, a little paragraph about the game, the bullet points, and again the screenshots were usually in a bigger, imposed over that Super NES logo. So really awesome boxes. And like I said, you just saw this on the shelf. A little bit later on, the Nintendo exclusives would always have this, and this has really persisted in some way or another to this day, this little tear on the top, just letting us know that it was only for Nintendo. I love the Super Punch-Out box. I'm not going to open up these boxes just because I'm trying to keep them in the best condition possible, but basically you go inside and you have a little white insert in which the game sits, then underneath that you have the instruction manuals. Sad thing here, though, is that and I'm telling you this, I'm not going to open it up because these boxes, they can be damaged so easily. So unlike the Sega boxes, they did not stand the test of time, but just an absolutely classic box. The Super Famicom boxes, the SNES in Japan, a little bit different here. They actually look like, we put them side by side, it's a little narrower. This is actually like a VCR or a VHS tape box. And if we look at the back here, they tended to give you like one sort of bigger screenshot and just a little bit more art. And of course the logo was not on every side of the box, but these were cool in their own right. Again, I'm not going to open it up because it is a little bit fragile, but I love that even more. I love that Super Famicom logo. So that's the SNES, Super Famicom. Then, of course, the Nintendo 64 was released, and again, they preserved the same kind of box. There you have the little teardown, only for Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 games would give you, in some cases, little indications of what was required to play it. In this case, you needed the Rumble Pack, and it was only a one-player game. And a little bit, some more screenshots. Still, I don't know if you can see that with the glare, but you still had the bullet points and just a little paragraph about the game. All the information that you needed, though, was in this little red border on the left. Big N64 logo and almost like a shadowy white kind of box art. So you can see on the shelf, it was clear what was what, even though it was kind of, it's the same size box, basically. I was never crazy about the N64 boxes. I really, really preferred the Super Nintendo boxes, but you can see that product differentiation. Same deal, I'm not going to open it. It really was the same content, same packing structure as the SNES boxes. In Japan, the Nintendo 64 boxes were a little bigger. You can see here on the back, just a little bit more information. Only slightly bigger, though, if you can see that. Lots of art, and the only indication was up here that it was an N64 game. And after that, moving on to the modern era of Nintendo consoles, we have the GameCube, the Wii, and the Wii U, and it's all sort of the same here. Again, if we just zoom in on the GameCube, it had this kind of black dip up here with the logo. I actually kind of like that, and you see that here on the bottom. I really like the GameCube logo. And in this generation, and this was standard across all of the 6th generation consoles and box packs, you had the artwork, a lot more artwork on the back, and what was required to play the game, what sorts of peripherals, what was necessary. In this case, broadband. So you had that black box, standard DVD case. We look inside. Obviously, the game discs were a lot smaller, and so you have that sort of small CD retaining area, and then a space for your memory card. I always thought this was funny. Why, if you could rewrite or overwrite your saves, why would you need a memory card per game? I always thought that was just sort of a little idea to get you spending more money than you wanted to, you know, maybe getting uninformed buyers to say, oh gosh, I need another memory card for this. Don't know why they did it, but again, a classy, solid box for the GameCube. And then, you know, the Wii, so you had this little security thing here. This was not on a lot of other cases. You know, the Wii ditched the black logo spanning the top for a little white Wii here, and I think, you know, again, look at it on the shelf. The Wii stood out. It was the new, you know, white box, the new console, and, you know, white, I think, stemming from, you know, the Apple design. Seems like at some point everyone wanted to have a piece of consumer electronics in white. So, this one does not have a lot of box art on the back, but again, in blue you have your peripheral requirements. By the way, this copy of Xenoblade was original. I did not pick this up with the GameStop reprinting. And then what does Nintendo do? Well, they kind of, in some ways, copy the GameCube little dip up here for the Wii U. And again, we have the blue box. So, again, kind of lazy if you ask me. This is not a great way to differentiate your products, but it works. Again, in this case we have quite a few screenshots because Nintendo Land offered you a number of different games to play, and the peripheral requirements were down here. So, you know, what can you do? 3 generations now with the standard DVD case for Nintendo. And then if we want to look at their handhelds, it's an example of the Game Boy. Kind of like the Game Boy box, perfect square here with the little silver Game Boy logo. I like that. Game logos on all sides, but the bottom where you see the fold, and usually 3 box shots, got your bullet points. I don't have any Game Boy Advanced games kind of checked out on handheld gaming after this generation. I don't have any Game Gear boxes either, although they looked like the standard Sega boxes with kind of a purple bar that said Game Gear. And then, you know, after the Game Boy, I picked up the Virtual Boy. I did a video on that, so describing my experiences with the Virtual Boy, but, you know, this stood out. You always knew what games belonged to the Virtual Boy. I kind of liked it. Again, you had the red top indicating that, of course, everything was in red, but you still retain the bullet points. Not a bad box design for the Virtual Boy. And lastly, the move from the DS to the 3DS. Same sized box. The 3DS, they just moved the logo strip to the right-hand side, and actually the cartridges are a little thinner. The plastic box is in white. I actually like, you know, this is, I think, a better design choice for separating the products than the Wii and the Wii U. You know, very, very subtle, but effective. And then on the back, you can see here, basically the same amount of box art. And the insides, you know, really haven't changed that much. Although you do have, like, the venting here, which is funny. I don't know why. Maybe to save money, I don't know why you would have these little sort of square, punched out squares. But in any case, that is the evolution of Nintendo box design.